is Father John Hughes, and I'd like to welcome you to the third month of our 12-part summary of our spirituality formation book called Guided by the Holy Angels. This month, our topic is about the formation of character. Summary is broken down into 3 parts. The first part is about becoming like Christ. It's our goal to become like Christ. And in order to become like Christ, we need to form our character. And the fundamental aspect of forming our character is forming our conscience. Therefore, the second part deals with precisely that, the formation of the Christian conscience. And then lastly, we'd like to talk about 7 rules that help us to cultivate our relationship with our guardian angel. So the first part, our goal in becoming more like Christ. We want to take on the attitude of Christ. We want to accept his message in the way it should be accepted, with joy. We want to take on Jesus' way of thinking. We want to imitate Jesus in the way he loved, in the way he worked, and in the way he took up his cross, in the way he suffered the salvation of souls. And so we have to ask ourselves then, we want to become like Christ. Well, where are we now? We want to be honest with ourselves and be sincere before God with our talents as well as our weaknesses and our sinfulness. We need to recognize our faults. We want to strive to correct our habitual faults, and also to have the attitude to never give up, to never quit when we perhaps can't get rid of them as fast as we would like to. And what do I mean by habitual faults? Well, faults like gossip, selfishness, pride, having a dominating attitude, dominating over other people, or perhaps having a know-it-all attitude. We want to get rid of rash judgments, wanting to be the center of attention, bad words, impatience, curiosity to things that don't concern us, and then, of course, indifference, not really caring about what happens to other people. These are character faults that we want to improve upon, that will help us become more like Jesus. We want to learn to give up what we want when it is selfish. Our will, our own opinions, self-love. These are things that we want to give up when they're selfish. All of our faults interfere with God's plan of salvation. And therefore, to get rid of these faults as best we can enables us to collaborate more fully in God's plan of salvation, and therefore imitate Jesus better. In becoming like Christ, then, what should we do? Well, we should have an attitude of humility. And an attitude of humility goes a long way because it helps us to have an attitude of an apprentice our whole life long. We talked before about having a know-it-all attitude. Well, being an apprentice takes away from that know-it-all attitude. It protects us against that know-it-all attitude. When we have the attitude of an apprentice, we never have a condescending attitude towards other people's knowledge. We can always take on new things, learn new things, accept new things with joy and humility. We always want to be able to learn and listen. We always want to be willing to learn and to listen. And the guardian angel helps us in all of these things. He helps us to recognize and be aware of our weaknesses, and he encourages us to go forward in our striving for perfection, our striving to grow in our humble attitude of wanting to learn and listen. So all of this is a part of our goal of becoming more like Christ. Next, second part, we would like to talk about the formation of our conscience. And the formation of our conscience is necessary for recognizing our weaknesses. And the guardian angel is, of course, the voice of our conscience. And so, if we don't have a well-formed conscience, then we are rendering the angel's voice mute. We are making it mute. And why? Well, the guardian angel can still tell us that something's wrong. But if I'm about to commit a sin that I don't believe to be a sin, and my guardian angel tells me I shouldn't do this, well, I'm just going to ignore it. I'm just going to say, well, what's that coming from? Well, there's no reason why I shouldn't do this. It's not what I feel like doing it. I want to do it. Why should I not do it? We will ignore his voice, and so therefore we won't pay attention, we won't hear him, we won't listen, because our conscience is not well formed. So it's very important to educate our conscience, to form it according to the truths of the Catholic faith and Catholic morals. And the guardian angel helps us to do that, and then of course once we are formed, he pricks our conscience so we avoid evils when we recognize them. And he also helps us to practice a daily examination of conscience, something that we should be doing every evening before we go to bed. In our religious order, we have the practice of doing our examination of conscience just before we pray our night prayer. A well-formed conscience gives us the beautiful benefit of peace of heart. The guardian angel, when we don't have a well-formed conscience, we can do immoral things without our conscience pricking us. Okay? We don't have qualms about doing it. But because it's not in objective conformity with God's truth, even though our conscience doesn't convict us, psychologically we pay a price. We can become tense because we are not living life the way we should be. If we're arguing with people, talking about people, doing all sorts of nasty things, this is going to make us tense, and it can cause anxiety, even though we don't have any problem doing it with regard to our conscience. Well, the guardian angel can help bring healing because of our formerly malformed conscience, and he can also bring about correction to our malformed conscience, help confirm us in our newly formed conscience. And this will bring about peace, because not only do we have peace with our conscience in doing the right thing, but also psychologically we have peace because we are living in conformity with objective truth, with God's true love. So the guardian angel admonishes us to God's law. And why? Because that is where our life is. That is where we have true freedom. That is where we have true peace. The devil tempts us, seduces us to the apparent freedom of sins of the flesh, sins of intemperance, drinking too much, eating too much. All of these things can appear to be good. They can appear to, give us a certain sense of freedom to be able to do these things. But in fact, they enslave us because they take away our peace. They take away our energy. They take away so much from us. And so it's an apparent freedom to hedonism, to money, to an exaggerated desire for knowledge, whether it be a knowledge that will puff us up because of pride, because we only want to know for our own glory, or simply a curiosity of knowing things that have no concern with our lives. These are ways that the devil tempts us and offers us a false freedom. The guardian angel forms our conscience in a way that it grows in the fear of God. And we want to stress that this is a filial fear, a loving fear, a fear of offending God, not a servile fear where we're afraid of being punished. That can be the case in the beginning, but the more we grow in the love of God, the more we don't want to sin because we don't want to offend our beloved Father, our beloved Jesus, our beloved Holy Spirit. We don't want to offend them. We want to do everything we can to please them. I mentioned that servile fear it does have a place. We call it imperfect contrition. When we have a fear of punishment, that is sufficient for the sake of going to confession. And so we shouldn't do away with it. It's a step in the path to our growing in love and this filial fear of God. But our filial fear is a trusting in God. So one of the things that's a part of this fear of God is this fear of trusting in ourselves. The guardian angel can teach us to be afraid of trusting in ourselves, of trusting in our own strength, our own intellectual capacity. And he teaches us to not put our trust in ourselves, in our physical strength, in our spiritual strength, in our intellectual capacities, and the strength of will, but to put our trust in the grace of God and the guardian angel's help. Again, it goes from a servile fear to a filial fear, to a fear of not wanting to offend our friend. But it's so important also to have this fear of trusting ourselves, because when we put too much trust in ourselves, well, that can be pride, and then we can be headed for a fall. One of the reasons why God lets us fall is to teach us that it's only by His strength that we can do good. And if we think that we can do it by ourselves, we are in a very dangerous situation. So we have to recognize that we can't trust in ourselves, but we can place all our trust in Jesus and His grace and the help of our guardian angel. A well-formed conscience leads us then to a greater love of God and love of man, because that's what forming our conscience is all about, to live in accordance with the love of God. These rules are not, I don't even like to call them rules, because they are the parameters of God's love. The moral law can seem at first to be a restricting set of rules that hinders our freedom. But when we recognize that they are actually the parameters of love, that it is the way to true life, we recognize that it is a very liberating, beautiful gift. Not a restricting set of rules, but the parameter of life, the parameter of God's love. And it can help us to avoid things like perfectionism, wanting everything done just perfect, not because of love, but because of our pride, or an exaggerated sense of justice. St. Augustine says that there's nothing more unjust than a man who has this exaggerated sense of justice at all costs. And then, of course, there's a selfish desire for holiness that we want to avoid. We can want to be holy not because we love God, but because pride. I'm holy, I'm good, I have a lot of virtue. It's a self-aggrandizement, it's a self-glorification. We want to avoid that. And also, a well-formed conscience helps us to avoid scrupulosity. Scrupulosity is a very painful condition. It's an obsessive-compulsive disorder, and our conscience, when it's well-formed, helps us to avoid that. And our guardian angel can also help us to avoid that. And our guardian angel can also help us to be healed of it by making us aware of a scrupulous conscience. But at any rate, a well-formed conscience leads to greater love of God and love of man by avoiding these pitfalls: perfectionism, exaggerated sense of justice, selfish desire for holiness, scrupulosity. Okay, we get back to what the devil tempts us to. The devil tempts us to our own will. Therefore, we have to have a discernment of spirits. The voice of the enemy. The voice of the enemy comes in many ways. First of all, our own ego, self-love, self-pleasure, self-comfort, our own wishes, advantages, power that we can achieve, rising to power, the assertion of our rights, You think of the right to an abortion, the assertion of our rights opposed to God's law, attacks from human respect, ambition. All of these are the voice of the enemy. Again, this know-it-all attitude. He can speak to us also saying, everyone does it. There's no harm in it. No one notices it. He can blur the distinction between good and evil. And the devil tempts the worldly person more to the sins of the flesh, and an intellectual person he will tempt more to pride in one's intellectual capacities. But depending on what our bent is, if we are more worldly, if we're more intellectual, these are the different ways that evil will attack us. And he always seduces us to what is apparently good. He's never going to come out and seduce us into do something that we see as just simply sinful. It's never going to be said this is a sin. He's going to try and make it appear good. And that's why he tries to blur the distinction between good and evil, because then he can present evil as something good in an easier way. Now, the guardian angel, he always points to God, to God's word, to his teachings, commandments, and also to our promises and resolutions. When we're growing in virtue, one of the things that helps us to grow is when we make resolutions to avoid things that are that we recognize weaknesses in. Okay, we make a promise, a resolution. A guardian angel helps us to keep that, and he can also help us to recognize the value in it. And he can help us to recognize how we really aren't missing anything in the first place. What seemed to be such a big deal to give up, after we've given up, turns out that we don't miss it that much anyways. So we have to heed our guardian angel. We want to heed the voice of our guardian angel, because if we don't, his voice will get softer, softer, until we can't hear it anymore. Okay, so lastly, we want to talk about 7 rules that will help us to develop our relationship with our guardian angel. First of all, we want to always strive for perfection. This is very important, because, and I say perfection, I talk about perfection as well. What I mean is we want to strive for love of God, love of neighbor. We don't want to, in other words, we don't want to work real hard for a month, a couple months, or a year, a couple years, and then say, okay, well, I put forth a good effort, I made some progress, now I'm just going to relax and coast and maybe go back to the way I was before. No, we have to make an effort our whole life long. And the more we grow in virtue, the easier it is to sustain virtue, and the more joy we have in exercising virtue. So we want to keep up a constant effort our whole life long to strive for the perfection of charity, of loving God and loving our neighbor. And why is that important? Because if we aren't seeking to love God with all our heart and our neighbor as ourselves, well, then that means we're going to be sinning. And if we're sinning, then we're not listening to our guardian angel. So how can we be a friend of our guardian angel if that's the case? So number 2, we want to walk with God. We want to do everything we can to learn to be in the presence of God. And of course, it's impossible to always be in the presence of God. And so one of the things that we like to try to do is to, as much as we can, be in the present moment, to avoid worrying about the past sins, for instance, to avoid worrying about the future, but also to avoid letting our minds daydream in frivolous, needless things. At first, it may seem, giving up our daydreams, this is very, very difficult, it's a very enjoyable thing. Well, but when we mortify our flesh, it's usually when we are attached to something that we like to dream about it. Well, when that's mortified, the dream goes away, and then we're free to be focusing on our present moment. If we're with God in the present moment, it's beautiful. If we're focusing on the work that we're doing for the present present moment, that's fine. If we're at recreation with our family, with our communities, with whoever, we can focus on that. Just being in the present moment helps us to be in the presence of God, helps us to be in the presence of our guardian angel, because it helps us to be recollected. Walking with God, being in the presence of God in humility, too, for the second rule for cultivating a relationship with guardian angel. 3, we want to work with joy. Working with joy is very important. And this does not mean that we have to always have an experience of the emotion of joy. No, but what it means is that we have an attitude of gratitude, an attitude of not complaining. Because if we are joyful, a joyful person doesn't complain. A joyful person is always thankful. These are ways that we can, 2 beautiful ways that we can take situations that the world considers sad and turn them into something good, turn into something that is joyful. We want to work with joy then. And of course, Jesus gives us the peace. And we can say that peace is joy. And it's a joy that, we work with peace, we stay in the presence of God in peace. And then, of course, in various times throughout the day, this peace wells up into an emotional joy. But of course, it's not something, we don't have to worry about having a constant emotional joy. But to have that attitude of joy, a spiritual joy, gratitude, not complaining, seeing everything as a gift from God. The 4th rule is guarding our hearts. Okay? Again, keeping ourselves detached from worldly creatures, from people. We can be easily too attached to people, to honors, to titles, and of course to material possessions, to pleasure, to the pleasures of food, drink, the flesh. All of these things we want to be detached from for the sake of being able to have that freedom to be with God and to serve God. And of course, then going along with working with joy, number 5 is to serve God without complaint and be patient. We want to be patient in trials, because trials help to purify us and help us to attain to that freedom, which gives us that peace, which wells up into joy, which helps us to serve God with our guardian angel in joy and cultivate our relationship with our guardian angel. So serving God without complaint and patience, a beautiful way to cultivate our relationship with our guardian angel. 6, perseverance. So again, we don't ever want to give up. If we aren't making the progress we think we should be making, we want to keep going. And we also don't want to give up in the sense of thinking, well, I've worked hard enough for long enough, now I can just relax. And I think of a very sad situation of a woman who was an organist. And she's Catholic, going to Mass every week, and she was an organist for some 40, 50 years. Well, then all of a sudden one day, she just decided, well, I put in my time. I was an organist for 40, 50 years. And then she just stopped going to Mass completely. She didn't persevere. It's a very sad situation. Of course, we pray for her, we pray for her soul. But we got to persevere. And I can guarantee that this woman, whatever type of freedom she thought she was going to have, she didn't attain to it by doing this, by making this choice. It's very sad. So we want to persevere to the end. And this, the way of cultivating, the 6th point for cultivating our relationship with our guardian angel. And then the last, 7th, we want to be faithful to our guardian angel. And of course, we want to be faithful by having that attitude of gratitude, respect, and trust that we talked about in the prior conferences. Gratitude for his friendship, for all the services that he gives us, the protection, guiding, trust in his protection and guidance, and then of course having a profound respect for his person. So this is the 3rd month, formation of our character that enables us to become like Christ. Thank you very much for your attention, and God bless you.